2017. We have a presentation this evening and a couple of staff reports. Mr. City Manager, the first presentation, Production Master Plan Update and Energy Markets Overview.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council, as you are all aware, probably one of the preeminent initiatives underway this calendar year has been our Energy Master Plan, and really beginning to study what the future holds for Independence Power and Light in terms of supplying power for the ratepayers of the City of Independence. So tonight what we have for you is a touch point overview. I would not call this necessarily the final report, but just an update and a briefing on where that initiative stands, and begin to share some preliminary findings with the council. Of course, we'll need to finish the report, do a deeper dive with our Public Utility Advisory Board, but tonight was apropos to begin sharing some of those findings with you. So at this time, I'm going to ask Assistant City Manager and Director of Public Utilities, Mark Randall, to come up and give you a further introduction, and he will be followed by Mr. Randy Hughes.
Hi, I'm Mark Randall, Assistant City Manager. It's a pleasure to be here. It seems incredible now, but it was a year ago this month that you received this report, which was a financial risk assessment and a management audit of Independence Power and Light that was conducted for you by the consultants Management Partners and Michael Bill Management Consulting. In that report, one of the key recommendations was that the city conduct a production master plan for IPL. Well, then it was in November of 2017, the council awarded a contract to Burns & McDonnell to conduct such a study. And that was done after we did an RFP, and we had several firms who were interested, and they were selected to do that work for you. So they've been working on that production master plan. And so tonight what we'd like to do is, as City Manager said, the plan is not done. You're going to get your final report on that plan next month. But what we wanted to do this evening was to give you a little bit of a status update of the report, give you some of the preliminary findings that are coming out of the report, and also give you, as background, an overview of energy markets today. So to get that started, what I'd like to do is ask our Planning and Rates Manager, Randy Hughes, to come up and start with an overview, and then give you a little bit of a preliminary update about the production master plan that you're going to get next month. Randy?
Thank you.
Thanks. Good evening.
Hi, Randy.
Here we go. I miss Andy. He would be doing this normally, I guess. But anyway, just brief background. I've been an engineer in the electric utility industry for 38 years. That includes time as a power plant engineer, a manager in a T&D service center, a couple of T&D service centers, and 15 years as a generation planner. The last 9 of those years, 10 of those years, I was manager of resource planning. So I understand all the complex issues that will be evaluated in this master plan, the things we are evaluating.
So do you feel okay in doing it? Because you referred to Andy who?
Whatever that guy's name was, he used to work here.
Okay, so
Yeah.
If you're not ill at ease at doing this, I mean, your background lends you.
No, I hate public speaking, period, but who doesn't? So, you know, no, I'm okay. So anyway, tough part.
Some people don't.
Pardon?
Some people don't.
Well, that's true. I envy those people. The tough part is trying to get all that information boiled down to 25 slides or less. So here goes.
Thank you.
If I know how to operate this thing. Yep, the agenda is pretty simple. I want to start with some background on some major changes in the industry. And I start there because understanding the marketplace and those changes is critical to understanding the economic evaluations and the results that this council is ultimately going to make a decision on. So from there we go into the preliminary findings. You've seen this before. IPL is a member of Southwest Power Pool. They set the rules. Those rules are based on direction from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC. Enough of that. The big changes in the electric market today. SPP tells all generators when to run and how much energy to produce while running. That's pretty new. We used to have to run our generators to serve load. Today, we no longer do that. Utilities and SPP do not serve their load. They serve the SPP power pool. So all of the generation that SPP directs us to produce, that's sold to SPP at prices that they set. All of our energy for load is bought from that SPP pool, again, at prices that they set. Those prices, I guess, are based on location as well. Where am I at? I can't see what it is. Yeah. They set the prices for wholesale energy, and those prices are based on location, and we'll see a little more about that here in a minute. And as always, this is not a change, but capacity is key. And if you've heard me talk about the cost of energy before, I always emphasize capacity. That's because it is fundamental, it is required. But it's fundamental to the economics of the cost of energy. And pretty much everything you see here or read regarding the cost of energy totally ignores capacity. So that's critical.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, certainly.
So this has to do with capacity, and Independence, through our many contracts, has a certain amount of capacity.
Yes.
If that changes, does that change our price with SPP?
No.
But it would change our capacity that is part of SPP, because they're telling us when to run or how much to
Yes.
furnish.
Yeah.
So that changes our relationship with SPP then?
No. Nope, not in the least. We
So
have
we-
to have,
We have to have a certain amount of capacity.
right, and we'll cover that in more
Okay,
detail here
okay.
in a minute, so.
That's what I was getting
Yeah,
at.
okay. Accredited capacity. There is a difference between installed capacity and accredited. In order to count toward your required capacity reserves, it has to be accredited. As an example, a fossil fuel plant, coal, nuclear even, natural gas, a 100 megawatt fossil plant will be accredited at 100 megawatts of capacity. Now, annual tests are required on those units to document and prove that you can reach that, but year after year after year, we continue to reach that full installed capacity. In contrast, a 100 megawatt wind farm provides 5 megawatts of capacity. It's not cheap capacity. Solar farm gets 10 megawatts of capacity. Those are set by the SPP rules, approved by Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and it's because those resources cannot be relied upon. One of the reasons we emphasize capacity is the penalty for falling short, and it's 125% of the cost of installing a new combustion turbine. Nobody pays that. It's cheaper to go ahead and install the turbine or buy a capacity contract from the market. So I will say also that as a generation planner, locking in the required capacity is the #1 step. It's the #1 goal. And you'll see the master plan focuses on that. It's true of all generation planners in the U.S. The cost of accredited capacity. This gives you an overview of what our costs are. And as you can see, Dogwood is the lowest cost source of capacity that we have. Surprisingly, perhaps, our existing units here on the system are the second cheapest source of capacity that we have. We have 2 coal contracts, Nebraska City 2 and I-10 2. They're both similar. I just show Nebraska City here. But they're about $10,000 to $12,000 per megawatt month. And you can do the math. Capacity is not cheap. So we got 109 megawatts of coal times $10,000 a month times 12 months. It's a lot of dollars, but that's industry-wide. Capacity is not cheap. Now, I think we are in a position where regionally there's some excess capacity, and some short-term capacity deals may be the direction we go, and we'll get to that in the master plan. Any questions on that, other than you can see how expensive renewable energy is as a source of capacity? Nobody uses it.
What does all mean at the bottom there?
Oh, that's total weighted average,
Okay,
so $9,000 a megawatt month.
average, okay.
Yeah. You notice that the prices change year after year. That's because our expenses on each unit change each year, but the capacity stays the same. So those will change. And we hear this quite often of late. IPL units provide only 2% of our energy. The implications are obvious. The units are not competitive, therefore they have no value, and we have to retire them. Well, that's not true. The fact that they only provide 2% of our energy is actually irrelevant to the economic decision at hand, whether to keep them or retire them.
Why?
That's where we're getting at.
Okay.
Well, I was
Yeah.
going to, if you wouldn't mind, just backing up.
Sure.
And maybe you're going to cover this, because that did jump out at me at the IPL units, provide 192 megawatts of our
Yes.
capacity.
Yes. That's,
So is that what you're getting to?
oh, well, I don't know what the question is.
I mean, my point being, when people say we only produce 2%, I mean,
Right.
when it's said that we only produce 2% of our energy, this says to me that the majority of our energy is being produced by IPL units.
No, no, this is
Is that
just,
not- am I
this is steel on the
misunderstanding?
ground assets that when we need it, it's there.
I see,
And
okay,
that's why it's required. Capacity is reliability, basically,
gotcha, okay.
okay? All right. But those units don't provide much energy, but they do provide tremendous capacity because, as we just saw, it was, sorry,
100%.
got to catch up. Yeah, it provides very low-cost capacity compared to our new coal units, other contracts that we have. Also, if we're only producing 2% of our energy, that means we're buying 98% of our energy at a lower price than we can generate it for. That's a good thing. Also, when our units do operate, they effectively offset a portion of our load that we're paying SPP for, because we get all of our energy for load from SPP. We pay them for that energy. When we're generating on site, they pay us back essentially the same price or our actual cost of generation, whichever is higher. So it does offset our customer loads. The point is, there are benefits to having on-system generation beyond just the reliability that we get from having it here in case there's a problem on the transmission system. Having said that, those benefits are probably not going to outweigh the economic cost of capacity that's available elsewhere. The price of energy, we mentioned this before, SPP establishes that price, and it's based on location. It's called location marginal prices, or LMPs, and I'll refer to LMPs quite a bit. The LMPs are comprised of three components: the variable cost of generation, they don't pay you for your fixed overheads, unfortunately, and transmission losses and transmission congestion. Transmission, I can't speak right, sorry. And again, SPP controls the dispatch. They start with the lowest cost energy available and work up the line. So generally speaking, the LMP prices that we're paying are among the lowest we're going to find in the market anywhere. Again, pretty good news. This is probably getting into the weeds a bit, but it shows you a few of the locations that impact IPL. We are essentially co-owners of a share of the I-10-2 plant. So we pay for our share of the total operating costs, the labor, the financing, debt financing, everything. We pay that share of costs. When they generate, SPP pays us the LMP price for energy production at that point. At our load point, we have a different LMP price. Everything that our customers use, we pay SPP for. When we generate, it goes to the pool, and SPP pays us for that generation. So what do these changes mean? Well, in the past, whoop, I jumped ahead one, sorry. This is an example of regional LMP prices in SPP. It's a one-time snapshot. So this changes, those prices actually change every 5 minutes. The red areas on this slide are areas with high energy costs, and that's because transmission congestion, one of the components of the LMP price, it limits the ability to import energy from outside. These are high load centers, and SPP is trying to encourage local generators to generate more and local users to use less. So it's a price signal. Bluish green areas, aqua, whatever color that is, are low cost. That's because transmission congestion, limits the ability to export energy. And we'll see a little more of that in a couple of slides here. So what do all those changes mean for IPL? Well, in the past, before these, what I call radical market changes that happened in 2014, we could go to the market, look at daily, weekly, monthly, and we could find very low-cost energy to buy to help either hedge against higher prices or to backfill for an outage that we were having. Because back then, we had to generate energy or bring it to our load center. Today, we don't have to do that. So today, those energy deals aren't hardly available, they're hard to find, and they're not economic because the whole market has changed. With the short-term contract, am I there? Well, again, SPP's LMP prices are among the lowest available. With a short-term contract, we would pay the seller the contract price for that energy, plus we would pay SPP to serve all of our load anyway. So the bottom line is these short-term energy deals end up being a cost adder today, and it's another payment obligation on our ratepayers. I don't mean that to say that short-term capacity deals aren't economic. In fact, I think we're going to find that those are a good way to get capacity if we decide to retire some of our units. Wind and negative LMPs, if you remember that map, the one-time snapshot of regional prices in LMP, we have two wind contracts. They're both located in Kansas. Well, Kansas has a lot of wind generation. They're getting more all the time, but they also don't have very much local load. So they have to export that energy, and there's not much transmission capacity to do that. So as SPP keeps lowering the price on what they pay for generation out in Kansas, especially from the wind farms. During optimal wind conditions, they'll actually set the LMP price negative. So if you continue to generate energy, you have to pay SPP to keep generating. So for Smoky Hills, that contract, which we signed long before these changes in the market took place, they make money if they pay SPP down to $80 a megawatt hour. And the reason they make money is because they're not paying that, we are. The contract says we'll take everything that they generate. So when they generate, we pay them the contract price of $45. And if the LMP is negative, we also pay SPP that LMP because we own the energy at the point of generation. So we learned our lesson the second time around, and Marshall Wind Farm doesn't allow that, but anyway. So what does that mean? Annual LMP impacts. These next two slides are probably not politically popular, but I think it's information that, well, it's a reality that we face every day, and it's something this council and our ratepayers need to understand. The first slide shows our LMP, it's the market revenue, market margins on all of our contracts. I think as you can see, we're making money on our fossil fuel contracts, and we're losing money on all of our renewable energy contracts. On an annual basis, our fossil units are bringing in roughly $8 million a year in net margin. That helps to lower rates. But our combined renewable contracts added about $4.6 million to our costs. That puts upward pressure on rates. So the economics of decision making. Once a utility, how many times I need to get there. There you go. Once a utility meets its capacity requirements, adding any additional resources, whether it be a short-term energy purchase, more renewables, or whatever, the economics of adding that totally boil down to one thing. Well, two things, I guess. The LMP revenues at the point of that generation minus the total cost of generation. So where am I? Oh. All right. The master plan considers economics only. So the council, so anyway, the master plan is not going to show value for adding more renewable energy. So the council, it's really a council decision, a policy decision, if you want to add more renewable energy or additional contracts of any kind really beyond meeting our capacity requirements. That's something we're totally free to do. There is value that we all see in renewable energy, but we need to consider the impact on the ratepayers when we do that. And as a manager of planning and rates, perhaps now is not the time to be adding additional costs. But again, it's a policy decision. That's kind of it on the market. So questions? I'm sure there are none. Yes, Karen.
In English,
Okay, oh boy.
okay? Just plain, simple English for me. A third solar farm. What should we look at? Other than we want to be a green city, which sounds great. What else, from what I gathered from you right now, is there's danger out there that I may not be aware of. So I want to know, what should I look at? What is important to my goal is to lower my rates.
Yeah.
That's
That
my
is-
goal.
That's mine as well.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess big picture, we're buying energy from SPP on peak for right at or just below $30 a megawatt hour.
Okay, $30 a megawatt hour. Got it.
Right, yeah. Off peak is cheaper than that.
Right?
So, you know, we have to get our capacity. Once we have that, anything that's below that SPP price, well, that's not actually true either. If you can find a lower price than SPP and get paid that price or more at the point of generation, because the prices that are set are location-based. So basically, you just look at the economics. Is the price of the energy, is there a return on the margin from the SPP markets, or is there not? And if we're paying 30, if you looked at the earlier slide, I think our wind contracts are $45, $33.80, and the solar contract is $81.50 a megawatt hour. So not quite 3 times higher than the SPP market price.
So why would I do solar? I'm paying $50 more megawatt hours, what you're telling me.
Yes,
Economically, it doesn't make sense.
correct. And like I say, the master plan, the evaluation looks strictly at economics.
So I'm going to like that. Okay.
Okay?
It's going to look at the money.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. Now later on, I think I call it fairly cold-hearted because that's all it looks at. So anyway,
Well, I'm tired of our rates.
yeah. Go ahead.
So on the page with the title IPL LMP Impacts, you're showing negative on Smoky Hills, Marshall Wind, as well as the solar.
Yes.
And you said it was just Smoky Hills that was in the contract for us to actually pay for the
negative
SPP for the
LMPs,
negative, right?
right.
Negative LMP, but Marshall Wind is also in the negative. Why is that? Because we
just-
had a
right.
good contract supposedly with them.
Well, it was still $33.80 per megawatt hour, and the price of energy at their generation, the price SPP paid them, was less than that. So every megawatt they produce, on average, we're paying them more money than we're getting back from SPP.
So we're paying Marshall to produce it? SPP is not paying them?
No, no,
Because you said we're paying SPP about $30 a megawatt hour, And if they're producing it for 33,
Well,
that should be a
it's-
$3
Yeah,
negative, not
maybe
19.
I ought to go back to the location slide. At Marshall, that's where all the revenue costs are determined. Our contract, we pay them $33.80. SPP is gonna pay us because that energy's ours at that point of generation. They're gonna pay us the market LMP, which is less than $33.80.
Is that because of the transmission lines, the lack of transmission lines? Is that partially?
That and it's really all three cost components of the
Congestion.
LMP: congestion, transmission losses, and the variable cost of energy. These wind farms, with the tax incentives they have, they're offering energy in at negative prices. So I mean, it really upset the apple cart. I know when they first started talking about this new market and all these new rules, I went in kicking and screaming. I thought it was the craziest thing I'd ever heard. But as it turns out, cost of serving our customers, I think, has gone down under these new rules.
So are we losing money then?
At Smoky, yes. At Marshall, yes. On our solar farms, yes. Just FYI, I did get an unsolicited bid on solar today for under $30 a megawatt hour. So I would like to reissue the solar RFP and get some additional bids, but anyway, back to it.
So are there, in SPP, there's a line of generation from north to south in the central United States. So does that include a number of hydro generators? Because there are some north of here on the
There are
Missouri
some,
River.
yes. Yeah,
So that's part of the pool.
yes it is.
That's probably the most efficient.
Yeah, it's definitely the cheapest.
It's the cheapest.
Yeah. Yeah. It would be nice to have some of that. Okay. Master plan preliminary results. I don't think you're really going to find any big surprises here. This first slide is a graph of our capacity needs if we retire Blue Valley in 2020. And to explain, I guess, the vertical bars, each different color is a different unit that we control and the amount of capacity it has. The dotted black line that increases from left to right is our peak load forecast, and the solid black line is our capacity requirement. That's our target we have to meet. So I will also say that the lower portion of those vertical bars, the gray, black, darker areas, up to about 225 megawatts on there. Those are long-term contracts that are set. Master plan's not going to change those. That's here for the duration. Everything.
So,
Yes.
Randy, in the first 2019 bar, the segments that get us above, to and above capacity are all Blue Valley, correct?
Yeah, combination
Okay, I
of
mean,
Blue Valley.
these shades of colors are a little hard
I know,
to
they are.
tell one
Yeah.
from the other, but
Yeah, well, blame
just
the
so we're
consultant.
clear,
It's their slide,
the-
so you
the-
can blame them.
the dotted line that's showing our load and then the solid line that's showing the capacity that we need to meet.
Mm-hmm.
If we were to take away Blue Valley, we need to increase something
Yes.
in order to meet our load and capacity.
Yeah, the
Okay.
numbers in the, what is the first
And
number?
it shouldn't
Yeah.
be wind or solar under the current conditions.
Well, that wouldn't provide
Yeah.
the capacity you need.
Right, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Gotcha.
When we retire Blue Valley, we would need 58 megawatts. It's the numbers in parentheses at the
Okay,
top of the
gotcha. I
graph
see.
there.
All right, yeah,
So,
thanks.
And you've got 3 Blue Valleys there, Blue Valley 1, 2, and 3.
yes,
Okay.
So those are the 3 on the very first bar, right? 2019?
Mhm.
Yeah,
That are on the top
right.
stack.
sure. I can
And-
ask Kyle.
And we have to have capacity, what, 15% over maximum,
I think it's 12%.
12% over
Yeah.
maximum use? in the
Over our
inland-
maximum 1 hour peak. And again,
Yeah.
that's for reliability. By being a member of the pool, we only need the 12%. If we're standalone, we'd need closer to 100% reserves.
Really?
Yeah. If we were an island, we'd be on our own. So we get to share, all the utilities in the region have that 12%. Everybody's not going to have a major generator failure at the same time.
That maximum capacity is figured on the last year or the last 3 years, 5 years? How do they do that on an average?
That's the art, not the science of generation planning. Whatever we hit this summer, that's our target. We have to have 12% more than that. Whatever we hit the next summer, so it's a moving target.
Hasn't it been going down a little bit?
It has been, yes.
But it shows it going up here on the chart.
Yeah,
Don't know.
it's very scary to cut your capacity target too closely, just because, you know, are we going to get that 10-day, 110 heat wave that we've had in the past? And what's that going to do to our peak loads? We don't know. So that's the art part of it.
So as it stands right now, Randy, let me just, from this chart, as it stands right now, if we continued with Blue Valley, with the 3 units here at Blue Valley, we would be okay capacity-wise through 2038?
No. 38, well,
Well, you've got it up to
Yeah.
375, it
Yeah.
looks like, or higher.
yeah. Yeah, or 80 megawatts, sorry, yeah. Pardon? Yeah.
Is that correct? So
Yeah,
if
we're
we-
good through 2038 if we keep them. Okay.
That was my question, okay.
All right. This is just a look at a few of the capacity technologies that we evaluated early on in the Energy Master Plan, and this is really kind of a pre-screening step to see what makes sense and what works. A couple of things to point out, I guess. The numbers show the importance of economies of scale when it comes to building generation plants. You notice the larger plants, the 216 megawatt frame CT and the 1,000 megawatt combined cycle are the lowest cost up there. The problem is we don't need that much energy. Our load doesn't support it. So we'd be, if we were installing something new, we'd be looking at one of the other technologies. Okay, this is really a preview of what you will see in the final report. And I'm not going to try to explain net present value quite yet, but the vertical columns to the right of the years are individual generation plans. It's a different combination of technologies and resources to meet our capacity targets. The first one is business as usual. We don't retire anything. Well, that has a 20-year cost of $746 million. And the way to think about that net present value is if you had $746 million in the bank today, you could spend annually for 20 years the cost of maintaining those units and everything else on our system, and essentially break even at the end of the 20-year period. You'd have zero left in your bank account. But looking at it on that basis gives you an apples-to-apples comparison between the different plans. The second plan shows retiring Blue Valley and adding 100 megawatts of Dogwood. We don't need that much. So that's one of the refinements we'll be making. But it shows, what, 670 million. It's about 3.75 million a year cheaper at this point. Now, one of the things that's not included here is that we're not looking at the hourly market revenues. The computer model that comes up with these, and it's a very complex computer model, trust me. It looks at average weekly SPP prices. I think that's right?
It's still hourly, it takes a typical week from each month.
Okay, it's typical week.
1 month gets trimmed down to 168 hours or whatever.
Okay. So it's close, but the final iteration is going to be a little finer. I don't think it's going to change these results significantly. So the other two, the different megawatt entries out there are short-term energy capacity purchases that we would need to make if we made retirements. I think both of those also show adding recip engines. One of those options is cheaper than keeping Blue Valley. The other one's actually more expensive, but still Dogwood looks like the best option. The risks of Dogwood, and this is not intended to say we don't want more ownership. I mean, I'll let you look through it and read the issues. There's a lot of concern with having too much of your capacity in one asset, one turbine that can fail. So I'm thinking that the bottom line is going to be some increased ownership in Dogwood and short-term capacity purchases to carry us through. And our ultimate recommendation will really be what looks like the best economics, what's the best least impact on rates, not only just over the short term, I mean that's our area of focus currently, but long term, what risks and exposures do we have? So if we tie everything up in Dogwood, at some point it's going to die, and then we're stuck with up to 150 megawatts of new capacity we have to buy. So,
Randy,
clear as mud. Yes, sir.
15-year-old plant, is that relatively new in the?
Yes. Yeah, it's not bad. Okay. And Dogwood is a very efficient natural gas plant, so it's it provides actually somewhat of a hedge even if natural gas prices increase in the future, because it's still among one of the cheaper natural gas plants, certainly in the area.
Are they reinvesting their capital?
They are doing a heck of a job, yes. Yeah, they've maintained it well.
Good.
So that's good news. Okay, policy decision. Again, the master plan is cold-hearted, looks straight at economics. It's going to say, assuming these results hold up, retire Blue Valley now. Well, we're not going to do that. We need a transition plan, I think, and we have to consider the impacts on personnel. Okay, next steps. Well, we're going to complete the draft report, and I think Burns and McDonald will be here. I think we're shooting for August 27th to present the preliminary findings. I think that's the right date. Is that a Monday? So they will submit or have a draft plan for you to review, I think, at that point in time. But the work will not be done at that point in time. If the decision is to retire Blue Valley, and it looks like that's what it will be, then we have to determine what are the retirement dates, what is the transition plan. Because you don't replace that capacity without issuing an RFP. So we just got an unsolicited solar bid for $30 a megawatt hour, or paid $81.50. Get competitive bids, but nobody can provide you a bid unless you know what date you need this energy or capacity to start. What date do you need it? How long do you want it for? So that adds probably, I can't keep up. Issuing that RFP probably adds 2 to 3 months, because suppliers are going to need time to evaluate what they have available, what they can provide. If they're going to bid to build something, they may have to come out and kick the tires of Blue Valley, see what's available. So they need time just to prepare the bids, and then we're liable to get buried under lots and lots of offers. So it's going to take a while to evaluate those. But that's ultimately what needs to happen if we're going to make a decision that costs potentially tens of millions of dollars. That may be a cheaper cost than not doing anything, but it's still a lot of money on the line. Questions?
Thank you, Randy.
You're welcome.
Questions, comments?
Mayor?
Aye.
Yes.
Not so much a question for Randy. Mr. City Manager, the 27th is a Monday. The study, we're supposed to be introduced to the council that night, I believe. Is it possible to get that a week in advance, or how soon will they have that, you guys review it? Or is it just going to get it get you the date and give it to us.
I'll work with the staff council member to try. There's a couple things I know that we want to do. Part of the requirement of this project was to have a public hearing on this. That's
Gotcha.
one of the deliverables Burns and McDonald has to provide.
Okay.
Of course, want to engage our PUAB and then give council plenty of advance notice and time to digest this. So
Okay.
we'll work to try to accommodate all those outcomes in advance of the 27th.
Perfect, thank you.
Councilmember?
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
This is really for Mr. Walker. I know that Mr. Hughes has put in his retirement papers, and we are seriously going to miss you, Randy.
Thank you.
And he's going to be retired by August 27th. Who's Randy's backup? Who's going to be here? Who's going to continue this forward for us to have the continuity with staff that we need?
Well, I can't give you a name per se, but Mr. Randall and I have been working on transition plans and staffing, recruitments, and I'm confident we'll be able to have continuity of operations there. Mark, I don't know if you have any other specifics you want to offer right now.
Well, one thing is Randy has agreed that he would be amenable to being here to help during some of this, so we're trying to talk to him about the specifics of that, but I don't want to, he can't commit to anything right this moment, but would like to try to get his expertise to carry through. But we do have Burns and McDonald's going to be here. They weren't part of this presentation because, again, this was the preliminary one, and we didn't want to have them come up to just for this part. This is mostly background, but they're going to help us through that master plan, and I think we're going to be able to figure out how to go. I think you'll see when this report is presented, I think the course will be pretty clear as to what you need to do. But it will be falling right on the heels of that rate study, which is also coming along. And so we're going to need to, and AMI is also, which you're going to see presentations scheduled for the 14th on that. So it's all going to come together at the same time. So we are going to try to.
The 14th of what?
August. So
Okay.
then we're going to try to do quite a bit of, we have a lot of work to do, and so we are going to try to see if not to put him on the spot, we are going to try to see if Randy can help us on a part-time basis to help us through the implementation of the master plan and the rate study.
Lawyers have second chairs. If we don't have a second chair for Randy, I suggest maybe we get one. Seriously, before he leaves.
We'll, like I said, we'll continue working on that staffing plan and make
Thank
sure
you
we
so
don't miss
much.
anything.
Thank you, Randy.
Sure.
Couple quick
Like
questions.
I told Mark,
Yeah.
for the right price, I can be had. So,
I'm cheap, Randy. I'm real cheap.
I know that, Karen. Yes.
Just a couple questions about SPP, about the Southwest Power Pool. It's only been a few years that we've been a member, and
Well, no, that's not true.
No,
We've been a member,
a long, long time.
we've been a member, but we
Decades.
haven't been
You
a
increase your capacity.
we haven't been a capacity member, I don't think, like we are now. And-
what we changed recently was it's weird terminology. We were transmission owner, but not recognized as one. All we did was change our status in SPP to be a TO, which, a transmission owner, which allowed us to eliminate a lot of high-cost point-to-point transmission paths that we had to have in the old days and replace that with network integrated transmission service. So we just pay one price for whatever our load is. And, part of that transition, we joined KCP&L's pricing zone, and that brought in an extra $7 million a year in revenue. So that was a reason for that change.
And that's still part of our relationship now as,
Yes.
as a transmission owner.
Yes.
Yes. So with some of the controversies that have been going on over the past few years, like with the Grain Belt Express, they wanting to put the transmission, they've already got it okayed with all the states except Missouri.
Right.
If that goes through, will that decrease our transmission costs, especially from some of the wind power in Kansas? Because they can't get it to Illinois right now.
Yeah. Yeah. What that will impact potentially is the pricing out at our wind farms. It
Yes.
may alleviate some of that congestion that's driving those
Yes.
costs lower.
That's what I
So it
was
could be a
wondering.
good thing for us, but
So
it's not
that-
gonna change. Our transmission cost is based on our load, period.
But you said we're paying some cost to the wind farms because we can't get all of it here. We can't get all of it to
Yeah,
other.
but it's unrelated to our transmission
Okay.
costs. Those
Okay.
costs that we're paying through the market price, the LMP.
So that could help down the road some.
Yeah, it certainly could.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm not a transmission guy, so,
And-
but you would assume that it would.
And then I know there's been consolidation with some of these groups like SPP. Is that potentially going to change in the future? Will SPP combine with another
Yeah, regional transmission
regional
operator.
transmission? Yeah.
They were looking for, the Mountain West group was looking to come in, and they were in negotiations, and I think that fell through. Mountain West had a couple of members that voted against joining. Long-term, FERC may say, we don't need MISO and SPP and ERCOT and these others. We want you guys to join forces. Nothing's on the drawing boards that I'm aware of for that.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, no answer like no answer.
Okay.
Say real quick on the second chair comment, I did want to mention, just so that we don't hurt their feelings, there are a couple of other guys that work in rates with Randy, and so he wanted to make sure that that we have shout out to Robert and Jonathan, who are also helping, and will be available.
Great.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you, Randy. Thank you.
You
This
bet.
was a great report. It's really helpful to know sort of the policy decisions that are going to have to be made down the line. And I think having some time to prepare for that and knowing that the full report is coming, the cost of service report is coming, the AMI discussion is coming. I mean, we have a lot of things to consider. I don't think I'm out of line by saying the desire of this council is to have the most competitive rate that we can possibly have.
Yes.
And the most reliability and the most choices. So we want it all.
Yes.
We definitely do want it all. As you say, this is a, cold-hearted report on dollars and cents, which is helpful. I'm not surprised to see that the renewables cost us some money, and we need to think about that, is how do we, because we want to provide those choices to our community for a variety of reasons, but how do we minimize the impact to everybody else?
Right, and I will say
is
that-
what the question that needs to be.
Yeah, currently,
answered.
the SPP market, the energy we're getting, 30% of it is wind, on average over a year's time, and they keep adding more and more wind. So our energy portfolio is pretty green as it is.
Yes.
So, and that's certainly something we could look to offer. And we're kind of holding that back for the potential of a larger business to come in here and want green power. So we've got it. So, anyway,
Stay tuned.
Thank you.
yes. Sounds like I picked a really good time to retire. Lot going on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. We
Thanks.
appreciate it very much. Okay, this takes us to staff reports. Mr. City Manager, Pioneer Spring Cabin.
Yeah, Madam Mayor,
Location.
members of the council, as you'll recall, this past May, the council provided a directive by resolution to staff to come up with a plan to relocate the Pioneer Spring Cabin from its present site outside of our Sermon Center by August the 1st. So staff has been working on some options of what that might look like, some funding mechanisms for that. So this evening, our Director of Parks, Recreation, and Tourism, Eric Erfer, is going to review with you 4 different options, and I'll just let you give it a touch point of where we're at with this project.
Thank you, Zach. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. The cabin, commonly known at the time as the Brady Cabin, was moved from the corner of Walnut and Nolan to its present location by the Sermon Center in the early 1970s. At the time that it was moved, there were quite a few deteriorated logs, according to the reports that we read. And those logs were actually replaced, according to that report, with some logs of a cabin that once stood at the George Owens property. The exact age of and history of the cabin prior to the Brady ownership is not really known. It's not clear. Some reports say that the cabin was built circa early 1800s. Other reports say it was mid-1800s. Private fundraising was done at the time of the original move. Somewhere between $7,000 and $11,000 was raised privately and matched by the city. Throughout the years, the number of visitors to the cabin has been relatively few. According to the reports that we read, at its peak in the late 70s to early 80s, somewhere around 900 people per average year came through to visit the site. By the early 2000s, that number had dropped into the low 100s per year until it was eventually closed to the public, except for the request for private tours somewhere in the late 2010s. In May of 2018, so here very recently, City Council passed resolution number 6327 directing the city manager to move the cabin to a more suitable location, or at least to study that possibility. Staff employed 2 firms to start taking a look at this potential action. Rosen was one of those firms. They are a firm that specializes in historic preservation of structures. The second firm was Pishney. They're a firm who has experience relocating and repairing log structures. Together, these 2 firms worked together and developed 4 basic options for us to take a look at. The first option is to relocate the cabin to the National Frontier Trails Museum and restore, rebuild it there, then reinterpret the cabin as an educational and historic site. The estimate for this option is about $400,000, with half of that money being spent to actually restore, move, relocate. The other half of that $400,000 is in the interpretation of that and the creation of some educational spaces around it. The second option calls for the cabin to be dismantled and the logs worthy of being saved, cataloged, tagged, and moved to a storage site and preserved for some future use. The estimate for this option is $287,000, with the bulk of that money, $250,000 of that, coming in by way of the preservation process for those logs that are worthy of being preserved. The third option suggests using some of the salvaged logs and the roof structure to rebuild the current mercantile display at the National Frontier Trails Museum. The cost for this particular option is estimated to be somewhere around $107,000. But frankly, it may not be consistent with the future National Frontier Trails master plans as the details for that come forward. The fourth option is just to remove and dispose the cabin. The cost of that is just around $2,500. So given the fact that the options run the gamut from disposal to creating a new program and educational site, we're hoping for a little bit more feedback from you all this evening and some discussion to help guide us towards a decision. Funding can come from the tourism fund for any one of these options, but if one of the larger priced options is chosen, we'll eventually have to defer some of the smaller repair and restoration projects planned in the near future at all the various different sites. It's true we have a sizable, decent reserve fund at this point that we have built up, but it really is consisted and made up of one-time monies. We had quite a bit of salary savings for a couple of years. We canceled some of the contracts that were in place for some marketing and things of that nature, and through our consolidation found ways to do that a little less expensive. So the reserves that are there essentially were made up of one-time money. If you look at the operating cost of the tourism department now, measured up against the revenues that we receive from the tourism tax, which is the only funding source for the tourism division, you'll find that those are pretty equal. So we're not replenishing that reserve at a very high rate. So we're now at a point that we need to make a decision, and I know that was very brief, and I think you have a pretty lengthy report that was produced for you in your packets. So we're ready to hear from you and hopefully work our way towards a decision.
I have a question. At the risk of being haunted by ghosts of pioneers past, other than being old, what is the historic value of this structure?
According to Pishney and Rosen, about 50% of that cabin is no longer historically significant, original. It has been replaced. It has been repaired to the point where it's not in its original historic state. The chimney alone was a 1970s construction. Most of the roof structure is as well. So a little less than 50% of the original cabin is still there. So it does help in the interpretation as an interpretive site for telling our story, et cetera, placed in the right setting. In its current setting, obviously the numbers speak for themselves.
So, I mean, I've heard stories told, and I didn't grow up here, so I don't know, that there at one point was an actual spring that either at that site or at it was moved to that site at one point in time from someplace else, is that correct?
Yeah, the cabin itself was relocated from just up the street on Nolan.
But it was located originally by an active spring? Is that why it's called the Pioneer Spring Cabin?
It's called the Pioneer
Or is
Spring
my-
Cabin. Actually,
Yeah.
that name was changed from the Brady Cabin to the
Okay.
Pioneer Spring Cabin in 1996. The site in which it sets is an interpretation of a spring that was
I
very
see.
close to where it's located now. So
But there
the
is
spring itself
no-
is an interpretation.
Yeah, I mean, but there is no active, or may never have been an active spring that it was associated with that we can, I mean, some more research would probably determine that. Yeah, several years ago, we had a study done to do kind of a master plan for National Frontiers Trails Museum that required, a considerable amount of private funding, which we just weren't really in a position or prepared to go out and solicit at that time. But some aspects of that plan, were very good about creating more of a site that's similar to Fort Osage or, Missouri Town or one of those things that has sort of a lot more assets surrounding it that gives people that sort of pioneer experience all in one place instead of here and there and over there. I guess my question is, I would really like to understand if this is really 50% of an original structure is really worth spending $400,000 on. I mean, that's, my question. We could build a real nice, replica log cabin to tell this story for a whole lot less than $400,000. I mean, even storing it for future relocation is a lot of money. So I know we have a very, active and knowledgeable historic community in this city who could maybe advise us and our, heritage commissioners as to, just because something is old doesn't make it historically significant. And is it with our limited resources and grand plans for other historic sites, which we know are worth investing in, like the Vale Mansion and the Trails Museum and the Bingham and the Truman Depot. Is this a good use of those resources? So
Mayor.
I would like to, reach out and see, if we can find, the research you've done is really helpful, but like I say, it's, doesn't sound like the building in and of itself has significant historical value that we couldn't create the same interpretation with something that would be a lot more in line with our long-term strategic plan. Yes, Councilmember.
Thank you, Mayor. Have we approached the county, 1855 Missouri Town? If we were to donate it, would they be wanting to take it?
For
Not.
400,000.
We'll give it away for free, for sure.
Well, they have to come pay to take it.
Sure. Well, yes. Is that something that we've approached? Maybe I've talked to them about?
We have not. I
and
can
see.
certainly raise the question.
Sure. I've done a lot of volunteer with the kids and stuff out at Fort Osage, and there's a lot of individuals that, when they come, they typically look at a historic site. For the most part, people just come and enjoy the historic site. But then there's those hardcore diehards who want the true historic preservation of whatever they're looking at, and 50% of something that is a reproduction portion of that. I think that weighs quite a bit, and this is a tough one. I understand that we are wanting to try to do things and make things look a little nicer and spruce things up on our major intersections coming to downtown, and we should. I've lived here virtually my whole life, and I've never once been in that thing. Never Have you?
I have.
One time?
One time.
Yeah, how was it?
It was a room.
Yeah,
Yeah,
That's it.
sure. Fair enough.
yes.
I don't know, it's something to throw out to them.
Sure, we'll absolutely do that.
I mean, we're not talking about Lincoln's boyhood home,
We're
right?
not.
Okay. Yes.
I would agree with both of you. I think if we could donate it to the county, if they could use it at Missouri Town or use it at Fort Osage, wonderful. If we're not going to do that, then I think it's of dubious historical value. And to be good stewards, we really need to take care of the treasures that we have, like the Vale Mansion, the Bingham Wagner, the Truman Depot. Those things are the ones that really we need to be investing some of this money in, that we have a limited amount to spend. And so I would not be really in favor of relocation and restoration or storage. And only if the National Frontier Trails wanted some of it for a museum display, that would be the only reason I would be in favor of saving part of it. But otherwise, I think we should consider donating it if they want it. And Missouri Town has a number of little buildings that are used for different historical vignettes, and they may want another one, and this one's ready-made. It would just take moving it and reassembling it, and maybe a little restoration, so.
Yeah, I mean, somebody's going to have to convince me that this is, you know, just irreplaceable historic value. But I think, you know, that's a good suggestion. I mean, we can maybe salvage some of the original pieces of it to show people this is what the original logs looked like, you felt like, you touched them, whatever. But beyond that, I don't see spending this kind of money on something that where, you know, we have much more important historic sites to preserve.
One thing, Madam Mayor, I noticed, Eric, that to relocate and restore the cabin, it's $155,000.
Plus contingencies.
Plus the
yes.
25% brings it to 193.
Right.
Almost 194.
So the other half of that is creating something with it, doing some interpretation with it, so it's not just another standalone building that we move from one spot to the
Right,
other.
okay.
It's, the concept would be to turn it into a replica of a mercantile, which would tie into the National Frontier Trails Museum and try to tell some of that story through that.
Yeah, but
We can build a beautiful replica of a mercantile for a whole lot less than $500,000.
we do have a very active historical society in town. And I'm looking, for example, at the Chicago Alton Depot. They restored that. They did that. The city didn't. But a group of citizens got together and said, it is valuable enough to us that we will do this. So before this council makes a decision, I think it's very important that we reach out to our very active historical society members. I mean, I'm constantly amazed at how many people in this town love history, go out of their way to promote our history. And so I don't want them to hear $400,000. I want them to hear $155,000 plus a 25% contingency, and throw it out to them and say, we can't do it. I agree. We don't have the money, but I don't want to shut that door. I want to leave that door open at least for, I don't know, 4 to 8 weeks to give them an opportunity to talk about it, to mobilize, and maybe present a plan. Maybe they'll come back and say, we don't care, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that, but I know that our community loves history, and I don't want to shut it down.
I agree.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I agree with that, and I would even maybe go a step further, that if there's such an outcry on social media and what we hear on the street, that this is something that has got to be saved, that the historic community mobilized, gets the plan together, the city works with us. I don't want to say we match them, but I think we could probably help out in some way. I'm just throwing out an idea, but let's let the community decide on what they want to do with this. And if they truly want this thing saved, then they will step up and show us.
Very good. Great.
Direction?
Great, I got it.
Got it? Okay.
Good.
Thank you.
Can you get the word out to the?
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
This brings us to our discussion on qualifications to serve on the Independence Square Advisory Board. Madam City Clerk, would you like to give us the background on this?
Yeah, a few weeks ago, Mayor, you had just asked that we take a look at the qualifications to serve on the Independence Square Advisory Board. So in your packet, I have given you the two ordinances that's kind of formed the board and formed the boundaries of the board. And then also there's a map. So to show you kind of how those boundaries are formed. And I didn't put the current vacancies, but I think we're down from 9 to 5. And I think everyone has expired.
Okay.
Well, I'm working on
So this map shows 3 areas. I thought there were 4.
that. Nope, 3.
There are 3.
Mhm.
Okay, and can you, for the council, explain how the makeup of the board is, the requirements of the makeup of the board as it currently stands?
It's the property owners or business owners can be a part of the board, and it's 3 members per area.
Okay.
So 9 members total.
Okay, thank you. The reason, and Councilman Perkins, I'll let you weigh in on this since this is in your district. But the trouble that we've had in recent years with this board is that there's plenty of people who are interested in helping out with the square, but they don't meet the requirements of being in one of these 3 areas. You know, we might have 3 from Area 1, I'm just making this up, and none from Area 3. But we might have 6 people in Area 1 who would like to, you know, who are active and would like to serve. So I just think these boundaries are really preventing this board from being fully, from being filled, quite honestly. And the Square Special Business District, you know, has a very important role to play in allocating the funds for the benefit of the square that is based on the mandatory collection that happens on the properties. So I think we're preventing people who have a true interest and value to this board from being able to serve because they don't want to move into a new area to qualify. So I understand originally in the 80s why it was structured this way, to give equality to the board, but it's just been a struggle for a number of years to fill these vacancies and replace people whose terms have expired because of these restrictions.
Madam Mayor,
Yes,
I served on the board as a representative of somebody.
you did?
Uh-huh. These owners of the real estate can appoint representatives, and I served on it. That's how I met a whole bunch of people on the square. And perhaps that has fallen out of use, but it's allowed.
Well, Madam Mayor,
Yes.
as we were discussing this morning, I'm in agreement with you. Is your thought, as what I'm understanding, is just remove the designated areas 1, 2, and 3 and just have kind of like a at-large district there? I think that would probably make the most sense.
That would be my recommendation, is just to remove the requirement that you have to be in one of these 3 areas and make them all at large.
I agree. I think we have some really cool happening things, and we have some people that are very interested on a lot of these different areas.
Why not, if we're gonna make that move, why not make it 7 members? I mean, I think it was 9 because there were 3 sections and everybody wanted to not have a tie in the sections, but, and I know, I think you mentioned that there's a couple vacancies now.
There's actually only 1.
Oh, there's only one in
Yes,
there.
there's just-
Then that was a bad idea. Forget I said it.
Okay. I would, you know, we can consult with the chair of the committee and see if they have any desire to change the number of members. I think the number of members is probably fine. There are a lot of people and more on the square, so. Yes.
I think the area 2, I'm looking at that, it's very small. There may be hardly any people that live in that.
This
in
is
that area.
commercial.
Yeah,
It
it's
is just commercial.
It's
Just commercial,
Yeah,
okay.
it's just commercial.
And there's some people that live in upstairs too.
Yeah.
They're not the owners, though. Well, maybe they are.
Some.
Some.
It's happening, I'm telling you. The square's,
I-
it's
I think
happening.
it'd be fine to just do away with the boundaries and have 9 members
Yeah, from anywhere.
from anywhere in the square area.
Okay, so why don't we make that recommendation? Certainly, we will consult with the current members of the board chair to make sure that that's acceptable and help get them some more people on board.
And I will say, Mayor, that I was told today that they sent out letters about a year ago, and they are down from 104 property owners / businesses owners to 51. So that there are just less variety of owners and business owners and property owners, which makes sense.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. City Manager, anything else this evening?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Okay, we are adjourned.